I can tell about it because the elder's gone home now. I remember Elder, oh goodness, Elder Latier, when he's my assistant. He started it one night, and he was trying to draw upon the powers of heaven and doing everything just right, and they prayed about it, and they felt good about the 11th floor in the apartment building. The only problem was there's only 10 floors. You can run into that to start with. But it works. The other night, when I was down in, last night I had the privilege of working with your 2 zone leaders in Zone 6, and they had so much lined up, they'd harvested everything out, and so all we had to do was go teach. But a couple last week down in Kitchener, I went with the elders, and we were rather late and only had about an hour, and it was bitter cold that night, as you remember, but at any rate, we knelt in prayer. I knelt with Elder Stolworthy, and he prayed about the areas. And Area 2 really stuck in my mind. I didn't say anything about it, but I just thought, Area 2, that's the one. And because I couldn't get that feeling with the other areas, I didn't know anything about the areas. I didn't even know how many areas he had until after he prayed about them. But anyway, he got up in his prayer and he says, I really feel good about Area 2. So I thought, well, we scored on that first one. And I didn't know anything about the streets or anything, so I didn't even try on that one except we prayed about it. And we started driving over towards that area. And as we went by one house, it just stood out to me. It wasn't there, the spot where we were thinking of going, but I said, we need to go to that house. And so we said, well, if we have time, we'll catch it on the way back. So we went into the area and prayed on the street corner. And we both felt good about several places. It was so cold that we wanted to get in. The first one we went to was an apartment. It was locked. We couldn't get in it, but we went to the next door, and we felt really good about it. And as we went up to knock on the door, a man came walking out, the man of the house, and he was on his way to work. He's a fireman, but he was very interested. And we could hear the children inside and the family, and they set up a definite appointment with that family, and I think there'll be good ones. I think there'll be new members of the Kitchener Ward before long. And then on down the street, we ran into another good referral, or a good family that we harvested out. Now, we missed on a couple, but it works. There's no question that spiritual harvesting works, and we can learn to draw upon the powers of heaven as we learn to utilize that. I remember many times in exercising the priesthood and healing people that have been sick. When we have the faith, it works. There's no question upon it. When we're prepared and we can draw upon the powers of heaven. In our own family, I've had several occasions where there have been dramatic, instant healings. I think of one just before we came on our mission when my mother passed away. The last night, her lungs were filling up with fluids, and there was no question she was going to die, and we knew it. And yet, during the middle of the night, my brother called and asked if I'd go with them to minister to her. So we went over in the middle of the night at 2 o'clock in the morning, and she was struggling for every breath, and a real struggle. And my brother anointed her, and I sealed the anointing and promised her in the blessing that she would be comfortable and she wouldn't struggle for breath and that she would rest. Within a minute, she stopped and breathed, and from then on breathed normally for the rest of the night. Now that's not a coincidence. I mean, that's not an accident. When your lungs fill up with fluid, it just doesn't stop through natural means. But she breathed normally and woke up normally the next morning, ate dinner that day, and then calmly passed away without any suffering, without any problem. We can draw upon the powers of heaven if we have the faith to exercise our priesthood and our callings as missionaries. And I'd pray that we'd take that gift home with us. The seventh gift is the gift of increased love for parents, companions, and the people of Canada and our leaders. Increased love for parents, companions, people of Canada, and leaders. You're familiar with the 13th chapter of 1 Corinthians. We won't take time this morning, but you might jot that down. That's really a love chapter. 1 Corinthians 13th chapter on charity. I'd hope that you'd read it and ponder the message and try to apply it. Also, as you know, the 7th chapter of Moroni, those verses 44 to 48, 48th verse particularly, I love. because it's on love and on charity. You'll want to read those later today. This increased love, I would have to put parents at the top of the list. I hope that you love your parents. Sometimes young people don't recognize how much they really love them until they're away from them. When you go home, you'll find that your parents mean a lot more to you than you thought they did when you left. Parents are so important. If for no other reason, and there are many other reasons, but the fact that they gave you life, that they brought you into the world, and the sacrifices and the service that they have given for you. I'd ask each one of you, if you haven't recently, next Monday on your preparation day, would you write home and tell your parents of your deep love and appreciation for them? Let them know how much they mean to you. You won't ever know how much they've given to you and how much they love you. Regardless of what you think, you'll never know that until you have your own children and you have a chance to raise them and see the service that you put in raising them. So express your love and appreciation to them. Love of companions. Oh, companion unity and love is so important. You don't have to agree with them totally. You'd probably never pick the companion you have. But the Lord picked them for you, and He knew what you needed. And there's a difference. I hope that you all get a tough companion during your experience. I'd feel bad if you always got a companion that was great and that thought just like you. I'd feel sorry for you, because part of your experience and growth as a missionary is learn how to solve companion problems and to learn to love your companion. You can love them if you just learn to express love. Just tell them, I love you, I appreciate you, I'm glad that we're together. I don't always agree with you, we don't think alike. I mean, what two people think alike? After all, some of you are drivers, and some of you are amiable, and some of you are expressive, and so on. But learn to love your companions. I've noticed in the Pursuit of Excellence seminars that almost without exception, every time, that one of the factors that comes up for the success, particularly in baptisms, is that feeling of love for companionships. You know, where each companion loves each other. I believe that's the most essential ingredient that you'll have, because it's hard to love those you teach if you don't love each other. And it starts right with the companionship. So if you want to be successful in baptizing, it's essential that you develop that gift of love. Love of the people of Canada. Sure, they're a little different than we are. Their cultures, their backgrounds are different. But what tremendous people. When we sang "Oh Canada" this morning, it just thrills me. I know I'm going to go home with the great, great love of these wonderful people here. And we'll never have success until we learn to love the people that we serve with, that we labor with. These wonderful people. And so I pray that we'll all take that gift forward. Your leaders, the love of your leaders. The first step to apostasy is to criticize leaders. They're not perfect. None of them ask for the job. Your own leaders aren't perfect. They're nearly perfect. Last night, as I worked with Elder Osborne and with Elder Sowers, I thought I was very proud of them. I really was. I was proud of them. I thought, for goodness sakes, these two young men teach like masters. Just a beautiful job. And I'm sure your other zone leaders and district leaders, assistants are the same way. They're great men. Again, they didn't ask for the job. They've never been zone leaders before. They've never had the experience. My assistants have never had that opportunity before. It takes a while to learn these jobs. Usually, most church jobs takes me 2 or 3 years to learn, and then they release you. Now, these other leaders don't have that long. One of the greatest lessons I've had in that is my own bishop at home. When I was stake president, I had to select my own bishop. And that was a tough job. That was one of the hardest jobs I had in the 6 years I was stake president. He didn't do things like I would do them. And once in a while I'd find myself saying, well, why does he do that? Why does he do that? You know, why does he think about this or do that? But then I'd have to grab myself and say, look, he's my bishop. Even though I preside over him as a stake president, he presides over me as a member of the ward and as my bishop. And I learned to love him and to get rid of that critical feeling. And we need to learn that lesson. One thing we need to learn to do is treat our leaders with kindness, because you never know. And leaders need to treat the others with kindness, because you never know who will preside over who tomorrow. It changes. I think of a general authority that was a member of one of our wards in our stake, Gene Cook. Here he was executive secretary of the ward. Here he was. I presided over him, and labored with him, and kind of motivated him, and now the tables have turned. So you never know who's going to preside over who. Better treat your companion with kindness. I remember a person I used to home teach was a missionary companion, Bruce R. McConkey's, and he hadn't straightened Bruce R. McConkey out a time or two, but I suppose since that time he's been straightened out many times by Brother McConkey. Well, the eighth gift is a sterling character built upon integrity, honor, and personal virtue. Oh, I think a character, sterling character, is so important. Character is the cause, or a poor character, lack of character, is the cause of most divorce. Really, there's no excuse for a member of the church not having a strong character. It has to be learned. It's something that has to be built. But set your goals high. Develop a sterling character. Emerson said, character is higher than intellect. Someone else said, the strongest character is built on the playing field and not in the bleachers. Well, you missionaries certainly are on the playing field. You're not in the bleachers, except this morning. But you're out where the action takes place. All character is built on the foundation of integrity, honesty. There are many scriptures that tell us about that. We don't have time today, but integrity is the foundation of living. I can't think of any other characteristic more important in life than that of integrity, honesty. That's the basis of morality. And so it's important that we learn not to cheat. And, some people wouldn't think of stealing. They'd never steal money from someone, but then they'd cheat on their income tax return. Or fudge, or loop, as Brother Vanderpost called it, looping on your income tax return. Or some people wouldn't think of stealing from a companion or from someone else, and yet they would talk about them falsely behind their back. And when that occurs, then they're stealing their good name. And that's stealing. That's lack of integrity, lack of honesty. I talked about honor at the mission seminar. I won't say much more about it except to say that honor is so important. I don't know how many of you have ever been to a school where they've operated on the honor system. A few of you have. That just simply means that you can be trusted. You're on your honor. You say you'll do something, you'll do it. And where that operates, you have a chance to vote. If you vote that you'll accept the honor system, it means the teacher can give a test and the teacher can leave. It doesn't have to be there, and there won't be any cheating. If there's cheating or cribbing of any kind, and another person knows about it, and that other person doesn't report it, even though he didn't himself cheat, then he has not lived up to the honor code. I remember a few years ago when there were a number of cadets from the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs expelled. I don't remember how many. It seems like there were 18 or 20 as a result of not reporting someone that was cribbing. And the same thing happened at the military academy at West Point a few years before that. You see, these people jeopardize their entire future in the military because of their lack of honor, of integrity, of standing up and being counted. Oh, how important it is. Sometimes you run into a missionary that the companion's doing things wrong, and he knows they're wrong. And he says, well, I'm going to be loyal. And I'm going to be loyal to my companion. I don't want to squeal on him. Well, they may be loyal to the companion, but in the event that he's talked to the companion and the companion continues to do it and won't straighten it up, he's not loyal to the mission if he doesn't report it to the president. You see, loyalty is vertical, not horizontal. I mentioned that at the start at the seminar, but some of you didn't understand. Loyalty in the church isn't loyalty horizontally to the companion, but it's loyalty vertically to the leaders. For example, if someone did something that was breaking the rules, a serious break of the rules in the mission, then if it's not reported, it affects the whole mission. It destroys the whole work. And frankly, that's part of the problem with our baptisms in the mission. There's been a horizontal loyalty, but not a vertical loyalty. And the Lord doesn't permit things to progress like it should when that occurs. Loyalty, honor, integrity, and personal virtue is so important. I can't think of anything any more important than character built on virtue. Cleanliness is next to godliness. As you read the scriptures over and over and over again, it says no unclean thing can dwell in the presence of God. Oh, missionaries, develop personal virtue, clean thoughts, clean actions. It's habit. Our thoughts lead us either to straight paths or to crooked paths. If you have a problem with personal cleanliness, personal virtue, I would suggest that you memorize the 121st section of the Doctrine and Covenants, the last 2 verses, and repeat those, because those give a lot of strength to me, at least, when I repeat it. That's the section on the priesthood that we've used many times before, but in verse 45, and let's turn the page, we'll start in the middle of it, right on the top of 2:16. This was President McKay's favorite scripture of all the scriptures. Let virtue garnish thy thoughts unceasingly. Then shall thy confidence wax strong in the presence of God. You see, if we have virtue garnishing our thoughts unceasingly, then we'll always have confidence. We can be in the presence of God with confidence, but without that we won't have confidence. I notice even with missionaries, if a missionary is dwelling with bad thoughts, they're having personal problems involving virtue, it's very difficult to look a person in the eye. It's hard to have confidence. It's hard to have confidence with people, even with our friends, or with people, if we're not personally virtuous. And you just think about it, we will be very uncomfortable in the presence of God. We'll squirm, as the 19th section says in other places. In the day of judgment, we'll really squirm. We will not have that confidence if we're not personally clean, if we don't have virtue. And so when it says, let virtue garnish thy thoughts unceasingly, then shall thy confidence wax strong in the presence of God, and the doctrine of the priesthood shall distill upon thy souls as the dews from heaven. And I like the next verse, the 46th verse, where it says, the Holy Ghost shall be thy constant companion and thy scepter. You see, without that personal virtue, that Holy Ghost flees away, and we don't have him as a constant companion. As a constant companion and thy scepter, an unchanging scepter of righteousness and truth. And thy dominion shall be an everlasting dominion, and without compulsory means it shall flow into thee forever and ever. Well, let's let personal virtue be our guide. And if you'll memorize that and utilize that when the bad thoughts and different things come to your mind, you'll be surprised the strength that it will give to you. Now, the 9th, inner peace and confidence resulting from obedience to law and mastery of self. Oh, how great it is to have that peace and confidence resulting from obedience to law and self-mastery. Really, mastery of self is what the gospel is all about. That's what religion is self-mastery. You think about it. What's fasting? What's praying? What's paying tithes and offerings? Almost everything we do in the church involves discipline, self-mastery. David O. McKay defined spirituality as an inner realization when a person has mastered self. And that's what spirituality is. We've got a little card that I'll give to you this afternoon which is the quote from Joseph Smith, which I think is very important. It resulted after the third section, I believe, when they lost the manuscripts. And after he was so brokenhearted, he said this: "I made this my rule. When the Lord commands, do it." We've got a little card to give to you this afternoon that has that on it. I'm not going to cover that more, except you all know the 130th section of the Doctrine and Covenants, verses 20 and 21, about obedience and the result of obedience. You all know about the 82nd section of the Doctrine and Covenants, verse 10, about the Lord being bound when we do what He says. When we do not what He says, we have no promise. The next gift, gift 10, increase self-reliance, considering problems and obstacles as opportunities for growth. Increase self-reliance, considering problems and obstacles as opportunities for growth. Well, really, that's what the purpose of the gospel is to help us stand on our own 2 feet. We're saved as individuals. Our parents don't save us. We can't even save each other as husband and wife. We have to save ourselves. And unless we've learned to stand on our own 2 feet, to withstand peer pressure if necessary, to do everything we can to make decisions, to take care of ourselves, then we haven't grown. And we're not capable then of entering into the celestial kingdom. And so that's part of the purpose of the church. If you think of the welfare program of the church, that's what the purpose is. It's not a handout. It's not something for nothing. It's to help people to help themselves. It's to help people to solve their own problems. It's a temporary aid with the people expected to give or to work according to their ability to pay for what they receive. Sometimes missionaries come to me with the problem, and it's tempting not to give them the answer. And many times it's very clear what the answer is. You may think sometimes that I don't help you much, but I purposely try not to. I want you to solve your own problems. Now, I appreciate you coming to me. I'm always anxious to listen. But actually, the whole purpose and one of the great blessings of a mission is to help you solve your own problems. And to not look at problems as problems, but think of them as opportunities for growth. And that's the reason I'm so delighted to see companionships having little difficulties, because you have a great opportunity then to solve it. And you can. And that's the reason I don't even worry about it if you're having difficulties baptizing. Well, solve your problem. It's the reason we're here. Solve it. You can do it. And you think of obstacles and problems as not as problems, but opportunities for you to grow. I like the saying, the proverb, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach him to catch a fish and you feed him for life. Well, that's the welfare program of the church described. I think of the story of the Conch Island seagulls off the coast of Florida. In St. Augustine, Florida, there's a harbor there. And a few years ago, the story that I read told about how the seagulls would fly miles in the ocean in search of food. And then one year, a shrimp fleet came into the harbor. Every night they'd come in and they'd clean their fish and take the shrimp and throw the culls overboard. And the seagulls finally discovered that they could find food right there in the harbor. They didn't have to fly miles out in the ocean again to get food. And so they just got it right there. It was conveniently delivered to them. A few years later, the shrimp fleet moved on. And they noticed within a week's time that the birds started dying. A closer investigation revealed that these birds were literally starving to death. That in that 5 years the shrimp fleet had been there, they had lost their drive or their desire or their native instinct to fly into the ocean miles in search of food. And so rather than do that, they were dying. I think that is one of the common dangers of civilization today. That's one of the problems that you and I face more than almost anything else. We've been given so much. We've had so much. Our parents have babied us along. They have solved our problems. They have given us food. They've given us clothing. They've given us everything we've wanted in many cases. And so we haven't learned to stand up and take care of ourselves. For this reason, I would pray and hope that one of the most important gifts you take home is to stand on your own 2 feet and solve your problems and to become self-reliant. Now, I don't want that to frighten anyone off from coming to me for an interview. If you have a problem, I'm always glad to listen and help you with it. And I enjoy doing that. I really do. I enjoy talking to you, and I don't want that to be a discouragement to you. But if sometimes you think I haven't helped you as much as you would like to have been helped, I hope you understand that I'm doing it for your own good. Besides that, I might not know the answer. The 11th gift is the habit of doing my best every day of my life. In your evaluations of your zone leaders, the thing that I notice most often checked as being low is that missionaries many times don't do their best every day. And to me, that's a shame. That's one of the most sad things in the whole world. You know, all of us have different abilities. All of us have different gifts. All of us have different talents. I see a missionary that they baptize 1 or 2 on their mission. I think that's fantastic. Other missionaries have baptized 50 or 60 or 70. And I think it's a tragedy. Because sometimes those missionaries could have baptized 100 or 200. Well, let's go home knowing that every day of our life, and particularly every day of our mission, when we'll be held accountable for every minute, that we have done our best. Now, we make mistakes. We don't do things just right. I have. If I could run the mission through again, I would do it differently in a few ways. But I know in my own heart that I did my best. And I pray that you go home knowing that you did your best every day. Now, if you can't say that up to this point, let's repent of it and start today. Starting today, for the rest of your mission, know that every day you gave your best. And that's all that's expected. I think of a situation that occurred in Dalat in Southeast Asia. When I was there, I was in a hotel in a beautiful little town. It's the only town I've ever been in where you land in an airplane. You have to climb up on the mountain and land on top of the mountain. And have to fly in low through the valley, and then you climb up because the wind would throw them around, and so you climb up like this and land. It's a beautiful little city. And the Vietnamese, the Viet Cong came in and did a lot of slaughtering of the people and just made a havoc of that city. There was a boy by the name of Tok Don that I sat in the hotel one night with, and I was talking to him. He was only 15 years old. I asked him, I said, Tok, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do for a living? He said, I want to be a doctor. And I said, well, you'd have to make good grades. And he said, I know. And I saw the school where he went, and it was worse than some of our chicken coops. Home had holes blown through it, and it was just a mess. But at any rate, he said, I said, what are your grades? And he said, well, I made all A's last term, but 1. I made a B in. And I said, well, that's great. What do you mean you didn't do too good? And he said, it's not great because I didn't do my best in the class I got a B in. And he was really disappointed in himself. Well, let's learn to do our best and take that home as one of our gifts. The last gift is a desire to pay the price. And Sister Russell has already talked about that to you this morning. A desire to pay the price. Let me summarize that one quickly by just saying that we reap what we sow, as listed in Galatians, the 6th chapter, verses 7 and 11. I won't go through that one now. I think of Matthew, the 16th chapter, 26th verse. For what is a man profited if he gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what will a man give in exchange for his soul? And I think of the other one in Matthew about lay up for yourselves not treasures upon earth where moth and rust doth corrupt and where thieves break through and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven. Well, we need to lay up for ourselves treasures in heaven. Lay up these 12 gifts, which are treasures in heaven, where moth and rust doth not corrupt, and where thieves do not break through and steal. You see, people can take away from you anything else that you might have. They can take away your physical possessions. You can lose your home, you can lose your car, you can lose everything of monetary value, but you can never take away these spiritual gifts. You can never take away these 12 gifts if they're implanted firmly in your mind and in your habits. I pray that you'll pay the price to take these 12 gifts home. And I can promise you they'll be the most important gifts that you'll ever purchase. The time will come when God will ask us, "What will you have?" Then He will say, "Pay for it and take it. Thou shalt be paid for exactly what thou hast done. No more, no less." I pray that we'll be willing to pay the price. Thank you, Elder Strike. This has been a good day. It's been a long day, hard day, but I think we've learned some lessons and gained a great deal from being together. On March 22nd and 23rd, for the missionaries serving in the Toronto, Ontario state, I guess that's all of zones 4, 5, and 6, we'll have a meeting in conjunction with the state conference of the Toronto Stake at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning, 10 a.m. till 11:30 a.m. with Elder Marky Peterson of the Council of the 12. Elder Peterson is the visitor, and he's asked that the full-time missionaries and stake missionaries meet in a special missionary meeting at that morning. So I think that would be a good opportunity for us to gather together. It's March 22nd, 10 a.m. at the Toronto Stake Center. It lasts for an hour and a half.
Are we going to any other meetings?
Yeah, you go to stake conference meeting. I believe I would go to the other meeting, which I think the general meeting is at 4 p.m. It's off schedule a little because of the Sisters' Fireside that night. Yeah, it's 4 to 5:30 is a general meeting. Those of you that are in that vicinity, I would do it. I'll leave it up to your judgment. Those of you that are out some distance away, you'll be it for state conference anyway, won't you? Yes, that's Saturday. Mm-hmm. Then Sunday morning session will be at 10 o'clock. Those this afternoon, though the hour is late before we leave, and I'd like you to take some minutes of this, some notes. I hope you've gotten good notes of the rest of the conference, because this committing and challenging, as I see it, is all important. The one thing that has always changed baptisms is whenever we talk about commitment and challenging, and as our challenges have gone up, baptisms have gone in direct proportion. And so I hope that you've taken close notes on that. It's very important. We have developed an evacuation plan for the mission, which is nothing new. It's a request that's been made some time ago by the brethren. All missions outside the United States are to have one, and so we have developed one. It's in the master plan is in the office, and the office staff will be familiar with it. I don't say that to alarm you, because it's not anything that's an urgent situation, and yet you have to be prepared, just like the situation in Mississauga, where I think we only evacuated 2 or 4 of the missionaries, but it could be, such as in that situation, where 250,000 people were evacuated, the largest evacuation in the world, as far as I know. And so we need to be prepared. It could be because of natural disasters, or because of such as earthquakes or flooding, civil disturbances, rioting, revolutions, wars, hostilities against the church, such as severe persecutions or unfriendly government actions, or other circumstances that could jeopardize the well-being of missionaries. Now, like I said, we don't anticipate any problem, but you never know. You think of the situation in Afghanistan and the situation of unrest in the world today, you never know what could happen, and the government could change.